Tutorial is going to be on selections, statistics, and summarizing in Pro. I'm merging the three together because they often go hand in hand, and there's not a ton that's different conceptually from what you were used to in desktop, but this is certainly one of those areas where the muscle memory is definitely a little different. And so that's really what I want to walk through here is less sort of the concepts of what you're doing when you're selecting. I'll remind you of those, but more the mechanics of Pro. For those who really want the deep dive into what selections are and such, I recommend you watch the Select by Attributes and Select by Locations video for the desktop channel. So this is also a video where I will occasionally bounce back and forth between this and desktop just to kind of reference those small areas where it's different. So we're looking at three things here. We've got some kind of crime data, some parks, and some neighborhoods in Chicago. Selections at their base are here. And for the most part, they run roughly the same, right? If I'm going to grab my little rectangle and select, it selects like it normally does. And if I'm going to take maybe a lasso, and select like that, that's all normal, right? We're used to this. That selects very similar to how we did previously in ArcGIS Desktop. If I right-click and open the attribute table so that I can watch what I'm doing in real time, I'm going to take this and drag it up so that it's not necessarily docked. Right, so as I'm dragging, 118 are now selected in crimes, 179, right? It switches. This is not different. It's showing you the ones that are highlighted, and I could easily cut to this view and see only those that are highlighted. At the top, you have similar options to zoom to your selection. Right, if you want to get close, you have the option here to switch, right? If you wanted to move from the 179 to everything else, and then you could switch back. Highlight is obviously still a thing, right? If you want to click on certain sub-rows here, right, you can highlight those and you'll have the option as you're doing it, to either reselect them, meaning only those four that are yellow will select themselves, or unselect, in which they'll disappear. So this will go from 179 to 175. So that's all roughly kind of the same, right? That's sort of what we're used to with ArcMap and ArcDesktop in doing this. One area where there is a difference, actually, though, is in when you would calculate your statistics. And so I'm going to try to see if there's any thing here that's worth calculating. If not, I'll do the yeah, it doesn't look like there's a good statistic here. So I'm going to jump over to the Chicago Parks. I'm going to open that attribute table and see if I have anything kind of nice and easy that I can calculate here. I'm going to add a quick field, and I'll call it acres. I'll make it be a float. Always when you're adding fields, remember to save. Okay, got that. I'm going to deselect everything. And I'm just going to kind of stroll my way over so I can do some quick calculations on my acre field here. Right-click, calculate geometry is all the same, and I'll refresh this in an upcoming video around field calculators and such. So don't worry if I'm kind of rushing through that relatively quickly now. All right, so we've calculated geometry. I got an acreage field. And I'm doing that because, again, what I want to show is I'm going to turn off the crimes, and now I'm just going to kind of drag and select a couple of parks. I'll take this up, minimize the window a little, take my selection, and I'll kind of drag and drop here. So I've got a selection here roughly of around 36 parks. And the reason that I wanted to do that is, normally when you're working with this kind of data, one of the things that you would commonly do with selections in particular is you know, in desktop you would right-click a field maybe that you want to do some analysis on. You know, so if you right-click acres, there are these options here, statistics and summarize. And I'll talk about summarize in a second, but I want to focus on statistics here. Statistics will only show up, same as in desktop, to a numeric field. So if you try to do it here on like location, nothing's going to come up because there's no statistic to calculate, right? That's text. But acreage, for these 36 parks, I could know the average acreage, the total acreage, the median acreage, the range of acreages. And, you know, extrapolate that to whatever data you're using. You know, pollution quantity of a site, or the amount of flooding that occurred at a site location, or a home sale price, or the number of people that live in a certain building, right? Anything that's kind of numeric, you can do statistics. The reason I'm going to show this to you is because this is actually very different than what we would be used to. If we did this same thing, and again, I'm selecting a different area, so the numbers will be off. But what I want to show you is this. If we do statistics previously, and I'm in Arc, and I come over here, and maybe add a field here. It's probably not going to let me. Maybe it won't because it's in use. Yeah, it's in use in Pro, so maybe if I take it out, bring it back in, possibly that acre field will be there. If not, I'll just do it for the square footage field. So I'll drag over, there's my sweet little acres. So I could right click and do statistics. Super simple window, right? It comes up, tells me there's 583 total whatevers. It's parks here. That number's always going to be the same as that. The minimum acreage is like 0.001. The maximum acreage is 1,015. If I add all the acres together, it's 7,700, and the mean is 13 acres. There's a histogram. You know, it's hard to read because of how small it is, but what it's showing you is essentially on like the x-axis are the different acreages you could get for every park, and the y-axis is the number of parks that meet that criteria. Well, the cool thing in you know, Arc is anytime you had something selected, especially when you're doing the statistic, it would only do it for those that are selected, right? Notice the number now is going to be 30, right? Because I've got 30 selected. And that's why the numbers change. The max is now 487, the sum is 639, and it's 21. So you can do that on Pro, but I wanted to show you that Pro doesn't default to that. It's something that's going to look annoying at first, right? Notice I have a selection of 36. You're going to think it failed, but then you realize it's actually just a better way of doing it that requires an extra step. So I'm going to take statistic, and the screen's going to blow up. A couple things are going to happen. All right, so two different windows came up. Let's drag them both out. So first I'm going to drag out this. It put the distribution and sort of my control for my statistics into its own little window here. All right, showing me all the values of acreages from minimum to maximum, and a histogram of all those that meet them. And then over here, is the actual statistics, right? So I can grab these out, kind of take it over here, and that's sort of telling me kind of what field I'm running the statistics in, and all that stuff that I would need to know about statistics, right? So I ran it on the acres field. That's why that's here. I did no transformation. This bins just controls the number of bins in my histogram over here, right? Notice that the histogram is shortening or lengthening if I change the bins. And I could put it up to 50 if I really wanted to. That's the mean, right? And I have a line that'll show it. A median shows me where the median is. It's pretty cool. Shows me where the standard deviations are. That's actually really neat, right? You can control really quickly what you're seeing on your histogram. You have the values for you right here. But the difference, right, is notice I had 583 selected. I can still see them selected here, right? I can look at their color and see that they were selected. But I'm showing the statistic for all 583. So it's not that you can't control it. It's just simply that it's up here, right? Kind of hidden, hanging out. You might have never seen it, but all I have to do is quickly say filter by selection, and that number is going to change from 583 to 36. Now it's only showing me my 36. It's showing me the mean of those 36. And I can jump back, right? Everything selected. Everything selected. The cool thing about this is there's also kind of another control you can do, which is called extent, right? So I'm going to zoom all the way out so I can see kind of every park in Chicago. So if I do the same thing and I turn on filter by extent, nothing changes here because I can see all my parks, all 583. But let's say I zoom into like an area up here where some parks are starting to disappear. Notice that number went from 515, 469, right? 403. Doesn't matter because my extent, it's whatever parks are visible in my extent. So that's actually really cool. You can conform your statistics, right? You're able to kind of see and modulate them. If you ever lose this window over here, just click on properties. You know, you can control what the axes look like. You could make the maximum a little different if you wanted, right? I'll take off the area and take off the extent. Make your maximum higher or lower if you wanted to. Like I could make my maximum, you know, like 200, and I'd only see a certain number of values here, you know, for my y-axis or, you know, your x-axis or whatever. And, you know, you could play with the numbers so that they are changing and looking a little bit easier here. But that's statistics, right? It's way more interactive here. You can play around. You can vacillate between selecting and your extent. You can quickly visualize your values on the histogram here. And then when you're done, you can take it here and you can export it as an image file as needed moving forward. So that's a big difference, right, from being able to just select something here, open its attribute table, and calculate statistics. You know, doing that automatically does it. You don't really have much kind of room to maneuver with this. It's sort of like a static statistics window. So definitely an improvement, but one that takes sort of a quick second. The last thing with this, and then we'll pause to the next video where we'll do the attributes and select by location, is I also wanted to show and remind you summarize, you know, which is another you know, type of tool here. Summarize is the same as it always has been. This is where you're, you know, largely just clicking on a text-based field. And so this one will work if you have it selected. Right, so I've got 36 selected, and if I click on the park class and I go to summarize, right, it's going to pop up over here, but it's roughly the same as it's been before. Hey, what table are you summarizing? What do you want to call it? Case field is their weird name for, like, what are you summarizing on? Well, I'm summarizing on park class, meaning whatever unique value you find in park class, bring that back to me. Like, I want neighborhood park to be one row. I want mini park to be one row. I want community park to be one row. And statistics is just a calculated statistic about that. So maybe I'll go and I'll ask for the acreages and the sum. So it's going to bring back to me for these 36 a breakdown by each class and what the total acres are. Just the same, even if it looks visually different from ArcMap, ArcGIS Desktop, the result's going to be roughly the same, right? I can open my statistic. There we go. If I added that up, that's 36 parks. One of them was citywide. That one is this many acres. There were 8 community parks in my selection, 63 total acres. So nothing different about Summarize. Statistics, way more interactive and involved. Summarize, just the same. So I'm going to stop the video here, and we're going to pick up on the next one and dive a little bit deeper into select by attributes and location, especially the attributes, because it is a different window that really sort of appeals to a broader range of people. In, you know, map, you really had to be into the SQL window, but this sort of gives another option for people that aren't as comfortable with SQL. But we'll pick that up in the next video.